My name is Mark. I'm 41 years old, and for the last 10 years, I've been what people call a tech guy. Just a quiet dude in glasses who writes code and lives in a peaceful suburb. But behind that unremarkable facade was a secret I hadn't shared with anyone, not even my own wife. And as it turned out, I was right to keep it that way. You know, when you have money, real money, but nobody knows about it, you get to see people from a completely different angle. You see their true face. And what I saw in my wife, Susan, shattered my heart into a million pieces. Susan and I had been married for 5 years. 5 years that I thought were damn near perfect. She was bright, energetic, the life of every party. I was her quiet harbor. We lived in a cozy house with a white picket fence that I'd bought before we even met, drove regular cars, and vacationed at local lakes. Every Sunday morning, I'd make her breakfast in bed. We'd drink coffee on the deck and make plans for the future. I never flaunted the fortune I'd made selling my IT startup 3 years earlier. The whole idea of showing off money made me sick. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for the numbers in my bank account. And I was sure Susan was exactly that kind of person. Every morning, waking up next to her, I felt like the luckiest man alive. She'd fall asleep with her head on my shoulder, and I listened to her breathing, thinking about how blessed I was to find this woman. Back in college, she was the most beautiful girl in our class, and she chose me, the quiet, shy programmer. Back then, I thought it was fate. Now I realize it was just an illusion. But this past year, something had started to change. At first, it was just sighs when she'd flip through magazines with pictures of luxury resorts. "Look how beautiful," she'd say, showing me oceanside villas. Then came the hints. "Can you believe the Johnsons are flying to Bali again? David takes such good care of his wife." David was a mutual acquaintance, a successful, polished lawyer who never missed a chance to flash his expensive watch or brag about his new yacht. He was exactly the type of guy I'd always disliked, flashy, pompous, obsessed with status. I started noticing how our behavior changed when we'd hang out with David and his wife. Susan would become especially animated, laugh louder than usual, keep fixing her hair. And she'd look at me with this strange shadow in her eyes, like she was comparing us and finding me lacking. Gradually, the hints turned into complaints. "Mark, why can't we afford more? You're so smart, but you have zero ambition. We're stuck in this rut." Those words cut like a knife, because I could afford anything we wanted. I could buy her that house in Bali, a yacht, diamonds, whatever. But I wanted to be sure she loved me, not my possibilities. Every conversation like that felt like a punch to the gut. I could have snapped my fingers and bought her a mansion on the coast, but I wanted to make sure she was with me for the right reasons. I'd joke it off, say we were fine as we were, that what mattered was our feelings for each other, but I could see the spark dying in her eyes. Or rather, how it would light up when she looked at someone else, like David. They started accidentally running into each other at lunch spots. Susan would find 1,000 excuses to end up at the same restaurant as him. Then she started going to yoga at the same elite fitness club where David worked out. Funny thing was, she used to hate exercise. Always said sports weren't her thing, but suddenly she bought expensive workout gear and started disappearing for hours every evening. She'd hide her phone, leave the room to take calls. When I'd accidentally walk into a room where she was talking, she'd quickly end the conversation and give me this forced smile. "That was Lisa. We were discussing weekend plans." Classic signs that I, in my blind love, refused to see. I trusted her. I believed it was just stress and temporary dissatisfaction. But your subconscious doesn't lie. At night, I'd lie awake listening to her every movement. When she thought I was asleep, she'd quietly grab her phone and sneak off to the bathroom. I could hear muffled voices, but couldn't make out the words. And in the morning, she'd be extra affectionate, like she was trying to compensate for her guilt with excessive tenderness. The breaking point came on an ordinary Tuesday. I came home early to surprise her, wanted to cook dinner.
It was the anniversary of when we first met, and I wanted to celebrate. I'd even bought her favorite flowers, white roses and champagne. The door was unlocked. I walked in and heard her voice from the living room. She was video chatting with someone on her laptop. I was about to go in and hug her, but the words I heard froze me in place. "Yeah, David, I know. I just can't take it anymore. He's a good guy, but he's such a loser. No drive, no ambition. I deserve better than this gray life. I just can't leave empty-handed, you know? I need to wait until he at least finds a better job so I can get decent alimony. Better yet, if he gets a bigger life insurance policy." Those last words hit like a death sentence. She wasn't just planning to leave. She was calculating my death as a source of income. My world, which I'd built so carefully, crumbled in an instant. Loser. She called me a loser. The woman I would have moved mountains for secretly despised me and was making plans for how to profit most from getting rid of me. The roses fell from my hands and scattered across the hallway floor. I stood there among the white petals, feeling something inside me die. I quietly slipped out of the house, trying not to make the door creak, got in my car and drove aimlessly. I drove through the familiar streets of our suburb where Susan and I used to take evening walks, where she'd point out houses she'd love to live in. Now I understood. She dreamed of living in them with another man. Two emotions battled inside me: heart-crushing pain and ice-cold, consuming rage. I could have stormed back in, made a scene, thrown her out on the street. But that would have been too easy, too predictable for a boring loser. No, she deserved something else. She deserved a lesson she'd remember for the rest of her life. That night, a plan was born in my head. Cruel, cynical, but perfectly just. I decided to give her a test, a love test. If she really saw me as nothing but a loser, then let's see how she'd act when this loser became completely broke. I spent the whole night working out the details. I needed to create a convincing story of financial ruin without actually going into debt. I thought through every detail: what to say, how to act, what documents to show. This was a chess game where our marriage was the stakes. 2 days later, I came home from work completely devastated. I put on a whole performance, sat on the couch, held my head in my hands, and went silent. Before this, I deliberately wrinkled my shirt, messed up my hair, even put water drops in my eyes to make them look red from crying. Susan, who'd been sitting with her phone, looked up from the screen with annoyance. I noticed she quickly closed her messaging app.
"What's wrong?" she asked irritably. "You look like someone died." What irony. Someone had died. My faith in our love. I looked up at her with real, genuine tears in my eyes, tears from her betrayal. "I got fired," I said in a trembling voice. "The project I'd been working on for 2 years got shut down. The company went bankrupt. The whole team's out on the street, and they're not giving us severance, claim they don't have the money." At first, something like sympathy appeared on her face. She even reached out to touch my shoulder. But then her expression changed, like the reality of what happened was starting to sink in. "Fired?" she repeated, and I could hear steel creeping into her voice. "How fired? What about the mortgage? Our bills? We have a car loan." "I don't know, Sue," I whispered, playing up my desperation. "We'll have to tighten our belts. Maybe I'll find something quick, but we might have to sell the house. And the car, too." And that's when the mask finally came off. Her face twisted with rage she no longer tried to hide. "Sell the house?" she shrieked. "I knew it. I knew you were a loser. I told you 1,000 times you needed to look for something better, to grow, but you wouldn't listen. You never listened to me. You were content with scraps, and now we've lost everything. What am I supposed to tell our friends? That my husband is an unemployed deadbeat?"
She screamed at me for 10 minutes straight, non-stop. Her words were like slaps, one after another. She blamed me for every sin imaginable: lack of ambition, wasting her youth, unfulfilled dreams. I could have married anyone, and I chose you. And what did I get in return? This pathetic life in this crappy house? I sat there listening in silence. Every scream was another nail in our marriage's coffin, but also another brick in the wall of my revenge. She didn't hug me, didn't say we'd get through it together, didn't offer to help find work. She only thought about money and what people would say. The test had begun, and she was failing it by the second. The next few weeks were pure hell. Every day I'd leave the house pretending to job hunt. Really, I'd go to libraries, cafes, parks, anywhere but home before my usual return time. I sent out real resumes to keep up the charade, but I'd skip interviews or deliberately sabotage them. Susan stalked around the house like a storm cloud. She made a show of buying only the cheapest groceries, gave up her salon, constantly sighed and groaned. Meanwhile, her phone calls with David became even more frequent and lengthy. Now she didn't even try to hide them. He became her shoulder to cry on about her unbearable life with an unemployed husband. "I don't know how much longer I can take this," she'd tell him on the phone, thinking I couldn't hear. "He's not even trying to find decent work. Should just go work at McDonald's or something, at least bring in some cash. But he keeps being picky. Salary's too low here, schedule doesn't work there."
Every night, I'd lie next to her and listen to her making plans to escape our sinking ship. She stopped touching me, stopped kissing me goodnight. I'd become a source of problems, not a husband. And then came rescue day. David invited Susan to dinner at the city's most expensive restaurant to cheer her up and offer support in tough times. What a noble night, right? She spent the whole day getting ready, got her hair done for the first time in weeks, wore her most beautiful dress. I watched these preparations thinking, does she really think I don't understand what's happening? She came back after midnight, glowing and happy, like she'd lifted a huge weight off her shoulders. Her hair was messed up, lipstick was gone, and she smelled of unfamiliar cologne, expensive perfume I'd never worn. She smelled like another man and expensive wine. She walked into the bedroom where I was lying, pretending to sleep, and triumphantly announced, "Mark, wake up. I need to talk to you. I'm leaving you." I sat up in bed, putting on a sleepy, confused look. "What? Sue, what are you talking about?" "I'm leaving. For David. He's a real man. He can take care of me, unlike you. I'm tired of dealing with this poverty, this uncertainty. I'm not going down with your ship. Tomorrow morning, I'm filing for divorce. I hope you won't fight me on the house. Consider it compensation for my best years that I wasted on you." She said this with such cold confidence, such contempt in her voice, that I almost admired her performance. She was absolutely sure I was crushed and broken, that I'd beg her to stay, promise to change, find a better job. But instead, I silently got up, walked to the closet, and started packing her things into suitcases. Dresses, shoes, makeup. I packed everything neatly, even wrapped her favorite perfume in tissue paper. She stood there watching me in surprise. "What are you doing?" "Helping you," I replied calmly, not looking up. "Since you've made your decision, I won't keep you. David's probably already waiting. Wouldn't want to make such an important man nervous." My calmness threw her off. She expected drama, tears, a fight. She'd prepared for battle and got icy indifference instead. This wasn't part of her plan. An hour later, all her stuff was packed and sitting by the front door. Outside the gate, you could see the gleaming hood of a dark blue Mercedes, like something out of a Hollywood movie. David had come for her, like a prince for his princess. The moment of truth had arrived. Susan stood at the threshold of our home, ready to take the final step toward her new, luxurious life. She turned and gave me one last devastating look. There was more contempt in it than I'd ever seen.
Goodbye, loser. I hope you find someone who's willing to live in poverty with you."
That's exactly when I smiled. For the first time in weeks, I smiled genuinely. "You know, Susan," I said quietly, but clearly enough for her to hear every word, "before you cross that threshold forever, I want to tell you something. Remember my old startup that I sold 3 years ago? That data analysis project I worked on nights? I never told you exactly how much I sold it for." She stopped, her hand frozen on the suitcase handle. Something in my tone made her wary. "I sold it for $5 million, I said slowly, clearly, looking straight into her eyes. $5 million. That money's been sitting in my personal account all this time, earning interest. I could have bought you that house in Bali, a yacht, diamonds, anything. But I just wanted to see what mattered more to you, me as a person or my bank account. I gave us a test, and you failed it spectacularly. Turns out you don't love me, you love money. And when you thought the money was gone, you showed your true colors. So yeah, goodbye. Good luck with David. Hope he can give you everything you're so desperate for." I'll never forget the look on her face in that moment. It was the perfect mixture of shock, horror, disbelief, and instant crushing realization of what she'd lost. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish thrown onto dry land. Color slowly drained from her cheeks, leaving them waxy. $5 million? She stammered, swaying like she'd been struck. "Mark, you can't be joking. That's not true. Tell me that's not true." "Have I ever joked about serious things, Susan? Ever lied to you about important stuff?" Reality crashed down on her like an avalanche. She dropped her suitcases right there on the threshold and rushed toward me. "Mark, forgive me. Please forgive me. I didn't know. I didn't mean it. It's all stress, depression. I wasn't myself. I'm going crazy from being broke. But I love you, Mark. I only love you. David means nothing to me. It's just friendship. I'm not going anywhere. We can forget everything. Start over." But her words were meaningless noise, fake tears, fake repentance. I could see in her eyes not love, but panicked fear of a missed opportunity. She wasn't crying over losing her husband. She was crying over losing money she never even knew existed. I gently but firmly pushed away her grasping hands. "Too late, sweetheart. You made your choice, and you made it honestly when you thought I had nothing. This is your true face." At that moment, an engine roared outside. David, who apparently heard our entire conversation through the open door, realized there was no point waiting anymore. Susan had gone from a prize catch to a burden, a divorced woman with no money and no house. He didn't even get out of the car to see what was happening. The dark blue Mercedes lurched away and disappeared into the night, leaving only the smell of exhaust behind. Susan was left alone on the doorstep, alone with 2 suitcases and a shattered dream of the good life. She looked back and forth between me and the empty road, real tears now streaming down her face, but these weren't tears of regret or love. These were tears of greed, tears of missed opportunity.